Coronary artery bypass graft. The first thing you have to do, of course, is open the chest cavity. As I said before, you have to make an incision. You have to cut through the sternum. You cut it in half because the bone grows together fairly readily. Then you open it up. You put a chest spreader in here to hold it open, and then you can do all the work that you need to have, that you need to do. You can see this guy's heart's got a lot of fat around it. Open heart surgery, in which this is open heart surgery in which a small piece of healthy vein is grafted around a blocked coronary artery. They usually take the vein from your leg. The healthiest, you walk all the time, so the healthiest veins in your body are in your legs, especially in your thighs. So what they'll do is they'll take a vein from your leg and they'll graft it onto, they'll cut out the bad part of the artery and they'll put that vein in there, on your heart. It tends not to be a very large vein. Doesn't have to be because actually the blood vessels around your heart aren't very large. So they'll take them from usually it's your thigh. Sometimes they'll take them from the calf, depending on whether you have varicose veins or not. A lot of people have varicose veins. This type of surgery is only used when the blockage is so severe or extensive that angioplasty is contraindicated. We haven't had angioplasty forever. When my dad had his open heart surgery, it was because angioplasty had not been invented by that time, and of course they cracked his chest open and they fixed his heart. As I said before, he had 7 blockages, and they were able to fix 6 of them. The 7th one, of course, didn't take, and that part of his heart died. But he lived for another 25, 30 years with half of his heart dead. Well, not half. The back part of his heart was dead. They also cracked his chest open to fix his valves, his heart valves, and they put in a mechanical valve, which was kind of interesting. My mother complained that he made noise at night when he was asleep. And what she was hearing was his heart valve. It was mechanical, so it scraped and squeaked and whatnot, so she complained about it. She was just teasing, of course. She was happy that the old man was still alive. I assume they used to kiss each other all the time, so I assume they liked each other. Is that okay? They kissed each other all the time. What do you think, Sharon? Is it okay if they kissed each other? They're married, right? You can kiss married people can kiss each other. Okay, thanks. I was just worried. Annual U.S. cardiovascular disease mortality. Although the mortality rate for cardiovascular disease has decreased in the United States and other affluent countries, it has increased in Eastern Europe and the developing world. Any ideas what's going on in the Eastern Europe and the developing world? Why they die of cardiovascular disease? Why their cardiovascular disease is increasing? That's the 3rd banana I've seen today. Do you have a banana? Do you have a banana? Have an apple? Isn't that weird? And they're all like on the verge of being too old to eat. That's my own personal opinion. When my mother was a child, they would tell you that if you ate a banana that didn't have spots on it, that you would get worms. I know, so everybody ate bananas that looked like that. They didn't eat the green ones or the yellow ones. They were just yellow or green.
The next batch I bought is pretty much clear. Blue string.
Oh, don't eat them until they turn like you're really not going to get worms. You'll get gas, but you won't get worms. So what's going on in Eastern Europe? Yeah, that's all on tape too, by the way, my conversation about bananas. Why Eastern Europe, and what's going on with, why are they dying from cardiovascular disease? Any ideas? Think. What causes cardiovascular disease? What could they be doing that we don't do? That we're smarter now. So it's in Europe, Western Europe, where Europeans come, Western Europeans come from. So what is going on in Eastern Europe that's not going on in Western Europe or the United States? Cigarettes.
Oh.
They smoke like chimneys. Exactly. You figured it out. Good job. In Europe, for instance, the cardiovascular disease mortality rates range from 981 and 1,841 per 100,000 people. For the Western Pacific and Southeast Asia, cardiovascular disease mortality rates are as high as 3,527 and 3,752 per 100,000 people, respectively. This is a problem. So they're dying of cardiovascular disease, but it's because they smoke. And when you tell them they shouldn't smoke, they tell you, men smoke. We smoke, because we do it. And that's how, we are adults, and so we smoke. And so that's how you mark your adulthood, is by smoking. And if you've ever been to Asia, even Japan, they smoke like chimneys. Cigarette after cigarette after cigarette. Sometimes they don't smoke filtered cigarettes. They smoke unfiltered cigarettes. House smokes. So way to go, you killed off all those non-natives. Tobacco came from you guys, so I'm assuming it was your plan all along to kill off all those non-natives. Exactly. The Framingham Heart Study began in 1948. In 1948, that's when the Air Force started their study, but the Framingham Heart Study was the beginning of the Air Force study. The reason the Air Force was doing it was because they didn't want to lose all those airplanes, but the Framingham Heart Study had to do with just the general population. Now, theoretically, the pilots in the Air Force were the healthiest people in the world. They had to run, they had to exercise, they had to do all these things. They had to eat breakfast, and their breakfast, of course, was made up of bacon and eggs and toast and coffee every morning, or orange juice. That was their breakfast. They were fed this before they would take off, and then, of course, they'd have a heart attack and crash their airplane. And the Air Force was not happy about that. They didn't really care about the pilots, they cared about the airframes. And they were losing very expensive airframes, and Congress was getting pissed off at them. So the Framingham study looked at a select group of individuals. It was a landmark prospective study of demographic, biological, and psychological risk factors in cardiovascular disease. When the study started, the death rate for cardiovascular disease in the United States was 500 out of 100,000 people. This rate peaked in 1950 at 586.8 per 100,000 people. The cardiovascular disease rate has been dropping ever since due to the information acquired from this study. So most of the things that we tell you not to do come out of this study, come out of the Framingham study plus the Air Force study, which is still going on, by the way. Risk factors that cause people to die of a heart attack. There are uncontrollable risk factors. Age, the older you are, the more likely you'll have a heart attack. Gender, males are more likely to die than females, up to a point. Family history, if you have a family history of heart disease, and of course my dad had mitral valve problems. When he first tried to get into the Army, they wouldn't let him in for two reasons. One, he had hemorrhoids, and the other reason was because he had a heart murmur. Later on in the war, in 1942, when he actually was able to get into the service, his heart murmur had improved to the point that they would accept him, and he had had surgery and had his hemorrhoids taken care of, which was a good thing because he spent most of the war sitting in a Jeep bouncing around on the roads of France and Belgium and Germany. So he bounced, and those are not comfortable vehicles to ride in. So he was on his ass most of the time, unfortunately, and of course, if you had hemorrhoids, you would have a lot of problems. Race and ethnicity also are uncontrollable factors. African Americans are more likely to die of cardiovascular disease than anybody else. Controllable factors, hypertension. If you have high blood pressure, we can take care of that. We can lower your body weight. No, we can't. You can lower your body weight. We don't have anything to do with that. But the heavier you are, the more likely that, of course, you'll have cardiovascular disease. We can improve your diet, or at least you can improve your diet to take care of the cardiovascular disease. If you smoke, you're more likely to die of cardiovascular disease. And we're going to talk about just how many years you lose by smoking cigarettes. and of course your cholesterol level. We have pills that we can throw at you, and if you actually take those damn things, then it will lower your cholesterol to the point that you will not die of a heart attack. Family history and age. Family history indicates a genetic proclivity for cardiovascular disease risk factors. First-degree male relatives who had a heart attack before the age of 55. If you have one of these individuals, you're more likely to die of cardiovascular disease at some point in your life. My dad, did he have a, yes, he did have a heart attack, and I had a heart attack. However, I have 3 brothers, and none of them have had heart attacks. I have 2 sisters, and neither of them have heart attacks, so I'm the only one. You too? No, you have a question. When did you have a heart attack? I had a heart attack in 2010. I was 60. Yeah, 60 years old. Is that the only one you had? Yeah, it's the only one I've had. I just got fired. I'm sorry? That's it. I'm scared it'll happen again. Am I scared that it'll happen again? No, it was conditional heart attack. I was under a lot of stress. I had just gotten fired. As a matter of fact, it was 9 days after they fired me. I taught summer school. I taught all these classes, and of course, you got fired? I got fired. Yeah. I got fired for doing research on American Indians, and they told me I couldn't do it, but I did it anyway. And then they fired my ass. They fired me for doing research, and my research was on resilience. I was trying to help with suicide.
So have you always been teaching?
I've taught college since 2001. Is that right? No, 1991. I've taught since 1991.
College student?
College, yeah.
Have you ever did anything like elementary?
I taught high school, let's see, I taught high school in 1984, and I taught junior high in 1991. My problem is we have to move because we're in the military. So it's kind of hard to find a job and keep a job, because about the time you get a good job, your significant other gets orders for someplace else. So
so she was in the military too?
She was, yeah, my wife was in the military. Yeah, when we got married, we were both in the military. And let's see, how does this work? We were both in the military, and then I got out in '83. And the reason I got out was because she was an officer and I was enlisted. You're not supposed to do that. It's against the UCMJ. Article 37. Something to remember if you're thinking of joining the military. So if you fall in love with the wrong rank of person, it's like dogs and cats having sex. Or horses and cows. You know, it's one of those kind of deals. These two things are not supposed to happen.
Is that the one you're still with?
Yeah.
Oh.
We've been married for 40 years.
Oh, okay.
I know. It's never going to work out. Enlisted people can't marry officers. They're just a different breed of human being. We're a different species. That was the problem. So I got out in '83, and she stayed in until 2001. And, yeah, so we moved around a lot. Japan, Mississippi, Texas, California, Nebraska. What else did we go? Maryland. We've moved all over the place. Texas 3 times.
Is she older than you?
No, I'm older than she is. By 2 years. She's better looking than I am. As I told the last class, the reason she married me was because I was a really good softball player. So I seduced her with my softball playing ability. Poor thing. She was blinded by not my beauty, but my ability to play softball. She picked me right off the softball field. I went to third baseman.
So you guys have to say baseball team?
I'm sorry?
You guys have to say baseball team?
Well, we were both medics, so I was on the medical squadron softball team. I was a star of the medical school, so of course she would have to be with me. I was the star. I wonder what she'd say if she heard me. Uh-oh, she better not watch this. I'm in trouble. First degree female relative who has had a heart attack before 65. Of course, that means that you'll potentially have a heart attack as well. Half of all heart attack victims are over the age of 65. It's usually what kills people. Sometimes it's pneumonia, sometimes it's a stroke, but usually it's cardiovascular disease. As you get older, you know, old people were really stupid when they were young, so they were eating a lot of bacon, they were eating a lot of eggs, so they acquired all this cholesterol in their heart, around their hearts, and then they die of heart attacks or strokes. But we keep changing what's good and what's bad. Once upon a time we said eggs were bad. Now we're saying eggs are good because it's got more HDL cholesterol in it. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in the United States of both males and females. Men over the age of 40 are especially susceptible to cardiovascular disease. Men are more susceptible to cardiovascular disease than women are until women reach menopause, until they go through menopause. As soon as they go through menopause, all bets are off. You've got estrogen that is protecting you until you go through menopause, then your estrogen level goes down. You grow a mustache. I'm just kidding, you don't grow a mustache. Well, some women, not most of them. I know. Grow beards, yeah, they got hairy arms.
I seem like,
As funny as that is, they grow the hair on their legs gets longer. No, we won't go into that. Gender differences in cardiovascular disease may be due to sex hormones. It's the estrogen, as I said before. Testosterone is linked to aggressiveness, and aggressiveness has to do with cardiovascular disease. It's also linked to competitiveness and other behaviors that may contribute to cardiovascular disease. Levels peak during early adulthood, just when gender differences in mortality peaks. And as you can see, this is the mortality rate for cardiovascular disease and breast cancer. As you can see, as you are going through menopause, it all of a sudden goes up. And of course, the probability of having breast cancer as you get older increases, but not only incrementally, only a very little. But as you can see, the probability of dying from a heart attack just skyrockets. And this is because you're not protected by estrogen anymore. Estrogen protects you from a lot of things. It protects you from kidney stones, protects you from cardiovascular disease, protects you from cancer. Humans, of course, need to reproduce, so you need to be protected during your reproductive years. Once you're through your reproductive years, there's no need for that protection anymore. And of course, since you are not having periods anymore, your estrogen level goes way, way down. And because of that, you don't have the protection of estrogen. Now, you could take estrogen therapy. You could take estrogen after you go through menopause. But that increases your probability of breast cancer. So that doesn't happen very often. We're not doing that anymore. We're trying to figure this out. Somebody came up with a brilliant idea of giving women estrogen after they go through menopause. It increases their libido, so they want to have sex more. It increases it protects you from all of these diseases. But of course, it also makes it more likely that you'll have breast cancer. Women are twice as likely as men to die following a heart attack. Women with cardiovascular disease tend to be older than men with cardiovascular disease. So when I had my heart attack, I was 60 years old. I had just played in the state softball tournament up in Montana. I was fairly healthy. I was still a sprinter. I had all of these things going for me, so I didn't die. Even though I had 93% occlusion, I didn't die. I should have died. I had a friend that had the same heart attack that I did, and he never regained consciousness. He went into a coma and died. And he actually got to the hospital a lot faster than I did. They took him to the emergency room almost right away. He had a hospital that was like 3 miles away from where he lived. I had my heart attack on one day, and then that night I couldn't sleep because I couldn't lay down. If I laid down, it hurt. So I didn't sleep that night. The next day I went to my wife was running a clinic up in Montana, and I went to the clinic, but the clinic was still 15 miles away. So my heart attack started the day before, and I didn't go because I thought it was something else. I'm stupid. I'm not real bright. But I didn't have surgery until the afternoon. This was the first thing in the morning. So it took them all morning to get me to a hospital where I could have my heart surgery. So they didn't do anything for me for a long time, and I still didn't die. People try to kill me, and I still don't die. But he never regained consciousness, and he had less occlusion than I did. But there was other differences. Not only was I in better physical condition, but he was a smoker. And that tobacco killed him. And I told him that it was going to kill him. I've been telling him for years to stop smoking. And he, of course, told me that I was full of bananas. Real slimy bananas. Cardiovascular disease tends to be diagnosed earlier in men than it is in women. And it's mainly because our risk factors are higher. If you are a premenopausal female, in other words, if you're a viable female, then the doctors don't even look at cardiovascular disease as a possibility. And the reality is that this is a rarity as far as women are concerned. But when they look at a man, they see somebody who might have a heart attack even in your 20s. So they're always looking at men as if they're about to have a heart attack. They don't look at women that way until after they go through menopause. Men receive more aggressive diagnostic and treatment procedures, and it's mainly because we die of heart attacks a lot more readily than you guys do, you females do. Compared with European Americans, African Americans are at increased risk, and Asian and Latin Americans are at lower risk of cardiovascular disease. This is a problem on the reservation, but it's not nearly as severe as diabetes. You don't have the same problems that European Americans and African Americans have. African Americans are a walking time bomb. They have more high blood pressure, and they are ready to keel over and die at any moment. And that's one of the problems with being African American. They tend to have high blood pressure, a large percentage of them. And European Americans aren't much better off. They have high blood pressure as well. People of low socioeconomic status tend to have more total cardiovascular disease risk factors, including high-fat diets, because, well, I just talked about this in, was it this class? Some of you guys wrote about this. The problem with the stores on the reservation. If you're hungry, where do you go? You go to the gas station. What do you buy? You buy that double fat fried garbage that is mostly, it's mostly grease, okay? It's just not very healthy food. Lack of exercise is a problem, especially in poor areas. If you're poor, you don't feel like going out and taking a jog. Your neighborhood may be too dangerous to run in. So what do? You sit in front of the television and watch television all day. The crappiest television you can possibly imagine. People of low socioeconomic status are more likely to smoke. They have a lack of access to health care. And this is a really serious problem in the United States. If you're really poor, then you will be on Medicaid. If you're not that poor, then sometimes you can't afford health care. And this was one of the reasons why they passed the Affordable Care Act. It was to help these individuals get health care, because they had never had health care before. And they were dying by masses. They were just dying in groups. And this was a really serious problem. It looked like we hated black people in the United States, because they were the ones that were affected more than anybody else. Now you guys live on the reservation and you have IHS. So you have free health care. And I congratulate you on putting that in your treaty. way to go. Because healthcare is expensive. And people make a lot of money off of healthcare. And people are greedy. So insurance company, we've created all these insurance companies that will give you really good health care, potentially, but you have to pay for it. And you pay through the nose, but you guys don't have to worry about this, and I congratulate you. You have health care. I do too. My wife is retired military, and because she's retired military, we have government health care, just like you guys do. And it may be a little bit better than yours. TRICARE. So I can go to any doctor and as long as he's a patriot and accepts TRICARE, then I'm okay. He will take care of me. So access to health care is another problem, especially with people of low socioeconomic status. A lot of individuals were making a little bit too much money to get Medicaid, therefore they didn't have any health care. A lot of doctors don't take Medicaid. And the reason they don't take Medicaid is because the reimbursement isn't very good. Now, they don't mind taking veterans. They don't mind taking TRICARE, but they don't want to take Medicaid, even though the reimbursement is exactly the same. There is an idea that these are lazy people. And that's why they don't have any money, and that's why they're on Medicaid. And of course, if you're poor, it's a much more stressful life experience. The Chicago Heart Association Detection Project found that men with the healthiest lifestyles had a life expectancy 9.5 years longer than other men in their age group. So if you jog and if you eat healthy, and if you don't smoke and don't drink, then you're more likely to live longer than other individuals. 9.5 years longer. When I was born, my life expectancy was 59. I was born in 1949. My life expectancy was 59. Well, I'm 69. And I'll be 70 in October. That's why I keep saying I'm 70 years old. I'm in my 70th year. I've gone well beyond my life expectancy. Life expectancy right now is 68.2 for men. And I'm 69, so I've already gone past that. I'm either living on borrowed time, or this is an average. It's an average, so I may live into my hundreds. It's possible. But I don't smoke and I don't drink, and I just ran 4 miles yesterday. And I lifted weights on Friday. So I try to maintain a healthy lifestyle. I try to eat vegetables. I drank a big glass of V8 juice for breakfast. It's like 3 helpings of vegetables. There you go. I'll eat fruit for lunch. I'll probably eat crap for supper. I don't eat a lot of meat, so that's not a bad thing. So potentially I'll live for a really, really long time. I'm relatively lucid, even at my age. If you talk to some old drunk that's 70 years old, wandering or stumbling around Gallup, he probably won't be nearly as lucid as I'm guessing. Yeah. People think I'm younger than I am. I don't know why. I was yelling at somebody on Friday. We had a meeting. Oh, it was hell. It was hell. Anyway, this old fart, he's trying to give it. And of course he's talking like this because he can barely talk. He's an old man, you know, and maybe he drank a little bit too much whiskey when he was younger. So I had a hard time talking. And then I found out he's younger than I am. Stupid son of a bitch. For women in the same study, the healthiest lifestyles prolong their lives 5.8 years. And there's a reason for that. The reason it's only 5.8 years as compared to 9.5 years for men is because women live a healthier lifestyle anyway. So it's not really going to increase their lives that much. Hypertension is a sustained elevation of diastolic and systolic blood pressure. Anything that exceeds 140/90, that is the cutoff for high blood pressure. If you have a 140/90, they will say you're borderline high blood pressure. If you have a 138/88, they'll say you have your pre-hypertension, is what they'll say. Normal blood pressure now is considered 120/80. When I first started in medicine, anything 140 over 90 was normal, was considered normal. But now, of course, we have done further studies. We give everybody blood pressure medicine, and now we have lowered the normal. So if you go into the military, if you go to the doctor's office and you've got a 130 over 75, they'll say, well, you're borderline high, you have borderline high blood pressure. Of course, this changes over time. They may lower this. When I first started in medicine, if you had a blood pressure of 118 over 75, we would have treated you for low blood pressure. Now they think it's normal. Now they consider it normal. I know, this is weird. Everything changes. When I first started in medicine, if you had a cholesterol that was 250, we thought you were normal. You had to have something over 300 in order for it to be high. Now it has to be below 200 to be normal. Everything changes. Of course, we also had a lot of people dying of heart attack and a lot of people dying of stroke. Whoops. And we would go, oh, but he was normal last time he came in, and then we decided to lower the normals. Blood pressure is a force exerted by blood as it pushes out against the walls of the arteries. Blood pressure below 120 over 80 is considered normal. So what we would have treated you for low blood pressure. Now, of course, it's considered normal. But you want a blood pressure that's over 100. My goodness, if it's below 100, we got a really serious problem. Starting at 115 over 75, each increment of 20 over 10 doubles the risk of cardiovascular disease. So if you have a 135 over 85, then we have just doubled your risk of heart attack. Hypertension is not diagnosed until blood pressure consistently exceeds 140 over 90. Pre-hypertension range is now considered 120 to 139 over 80 to 89. Hypertension is a result of a combination of biological, psychological, and social factors that can include obesity, lack of exercise, dietary salt, excessive stress, anxiety, and anger. Now this gets a little tricky because if you're African American and you're taking in too much salt, then they consider that a risk factor. But if I take in too much salt, since I'm not African American, and it doesn't raise my blood pressure, am I okay? Well, if I were African American and I was taking in too much salt, then that's a risk factor. But since I'm white and I'm taking in too much salt, it's not a risk factor, as confusing as that is. Hypertension is related to anxiety and anger, especially in middle-aged men. Men 45 to 59 who score high on standardized measures are twice as likely to develop hypertension. Adolescents who report chronic, uncontrollable negative family stressors exhibit higher systolic blood pressure throughout the day, regardless of gender, ethnicity, body mass, or activity level. And this can be a problem. So if you have a bad home life and you're an adolescent, you may suffer from high blood pressure. And this will become chronic as you get older, despite the fact you're not in that family anymore. And that person will potentially have cardiovascular disease. This is the part of the family history that we're talking about. Prevalence varies widely among racial and ethnic groups. More African American men compared with European American men develop hypertension at a younger age. And this is, of course, a really, really serious problem. Hey, Mose, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Groovy. Cardiovascular reactivity is an individual's characteristic reaction to stress, including changes in heart rate, blood pressure, and hormones. Social stressors may cause sodium retention in the kidneys, which acts as a vasoconstrictor, increasing the blood pressure. For a while, we tried to control everybody's sodium intake, and we still do to some extent. We made pop without sodium in it. So if you had Diet Right Cola, or just, Diet Right, or just, wait a minute, they have a brand with sugar in it. I can't think of what it was. Anyway, if you had Diet Right Cola, it didn't have any sodium in it. And a lot of times you can look at a can of pop and you can tell whether it has sodium. It'll say right there, low sodium or no sodium. Yeah, and this was because we thought that sodium was causing all these problems. But of course, by itself, sodium isn't going to do that, unless you're African American. So what we were doing, we were controlling the sodium. And if anybody has ever eaten any MREs, or K rations, or C rations, they're just loaded with sodium, because that keeps you going when you're, you need only eat one meal a day and you get your sodium ration for the day, and it keeps you going. And it makes you pee, which is what they want to do, what they want you to do. They want you to, clean out your system. But if you eat too many MREs, it locks you up. So all of a sudden you're constipated, which is not fun. Does anybody think constipation's fun? Anybody? No, okay. Social stressors may cause sodium retention in the kidneys. Okay, discrimination and prejudice may add to these social stressors, giving the individual chronic high blood pressure. Those of you who have lived off the reservation may have felt that people were looking at you funny, and maybe they were. Maybe they were treating you incorrectly. And of course, that is the discrimination and the prejudice that we're talking about. I was talking to Marius, when did I see him? On Friday, and he said, of course, he grew up in Holbrook and Snowflake. And of course, Holbrook and Snowflake are both white towns. Snowflake is a Mormon town. Okay. You all recognize, okay. You understand what I'm talking about. Okay. But when he was growing up, they used to call him Savage, which they thought was a compliment because he was a wrestler, and he found it insulting and discriminatory. So it bothered him. He felt that they were being prejudiced against him, that they were discriminating against him, and potentially they did. So he had a really hard time in high school. He was very rebellious in high school. And he didn't change to a more positive individual until after he got out of high school and got married. Then he decided, oh my God, if I keep being the person that I was when I was in high school, I'll be dead before I'm 35 years old. Anyway, so he felt the prejudice. He felt the discrimination. So potentially that did some hormonal damage to him, because his cortisol level was increased all the time because he was feeling this discrimination and prejudice. And maybe you felt the same thing. I don't feel the same thing here, despite the fact I'm like one of 15 white guys on the reservation, or on this part anyway. I don't feel that way, so I don't know why. I guess maybe I should. Who was telling me the other day that there are people on the reservation that hate white people? Somebody told me that. There are people here that hate white people. I have never felt it myself. I just love everybody. There's something wrong with me. I just, she told me. Oh, it was Francis. Yes. No, it was somebody else. I remember who it is, but okay. Obesity increases a person's risk of hypertension. Abdominal obesity promotes the greatest risk of cardiovascular disease. Abdominal is right here. This is where your spare tire is. Well, my spare tire is. I don't know where yours is. This explains why men have a greater risk of cardiovascular disease. As women distribute their fat stores in their breasts and their thighs, but men carry their weight as a spare tire. We've got no place else to carry it. We don't carry it on our shoulders. We don't carry it in our legs. We carry it in our guts. So men are screwed, in essence. They're screwed. You guys can distribute it wherever you want. That doesn't seem fair. My wife, if she gains weight in her chest, which is kind of cool as far as I'm concerned. But then when she goes on a diet, guess what happens first? Damn it. It's like somebody let the air out of her balloons or something, as tragic as that is. Don't tell her I said that. She knows. What am I talking? She's pretty much aware of my likes and dislikes. Total cholesterol level of 240 or greater doubles the risk of cardiovascular disease, while below 200 is associated with lower risk. And this is why we try to get everybody's cholesterol below 200, no matter who you are, whether you're male or female. And one of the things we're seeing now is a lot more obesity in women. In the old days, of course, women worked their tails off, literally, in that they had all this housework that they did. They were moving constantly. So we didn't have a problem with obesity that we have today. We do have a problem now. And we are seeing that in cholesterol levels. So we have started giving women statins that we weren't giving them before. Now the reality is that your hormones that maintain you as a sexual being, as a human being, cholesterol is a precursor to all of these hormones. So you need cholesterol in order to produce these hormones. It's one of the reasons why you crave fat. In order to make hormones, you need cholesterol, and fat has cholesterol in it. So you crave fat to maintain your hormone level. If you're starving to death, if you're anorexic, you have no sex drive, and there's a reason why you have no sex drive. It's not because you're a skeleton. It's because you don't have any cholesterol to create hormones, and so you're not producing any testosterone, which gives you your sex drive. All of this stuff makes a lot of sense if you think about it. So when you're dealing with let's say you're dealing with an indigenous group of individuals who are in famine. They're starving to death. They're in the Sudan and they don't have any body fat. These individuals will not reproduce, and the reason they won't reproduce is because they don't have enough body fat to ovulate. They can't ovulate because their hormones. They don't have enough hormones to maintain their menstrual cycle. That's the way it works.
World War II, the Jews and the Nazi were kept in the camps.
Right. Yeah, nobody reproduced. They had sometimes they had sex, but they didn't reproduce. But usually they didn't have sex because they didn't have enough. They weren't taking in enough fat to produce hormones to give them the desire to have sex. It's just the way the world works. High cholesterol and low HDL levels promote the greatest risk. HDL below 40 milligrams per deciliter is considered a risk factor. The French paradox is that the regular consumption of flavonoids in red wine and other foods may offer some protection against an otherwise unhealthy diet. And this is one of the reasons why the French eat a lot of fats. They eat a lot of butter. Actually, their portions are relatively small. So if you ever go to a French restaurant, you're going, oh man, I'm hungry. And they put this plate in front of you. It looks like, hors d'oeuvres, and that's the meal. You've just eaten the meal, but it's got a lot of fat in it, really, and it's really tasty, but there's not very much of it, unfortunately. But that's the way the French do it. And of course, they all drink wine. The Italians do the same thing. If we go on a pasta diet in the United States, we turn into elephants. But it doesn't happen with the Italians because they always drink red wine with their meals. And because of that, they can eat all the pasta that they want, and they don't gain that much weight. And these are known as flavonoids. The flavonoids are in the red wine. Flavonoids lower your cardiovascular disease risk in 3 ways. It reduces your LDL cholesterol, it boosts your HDL cholesterol, and it slows platelet aggregation. And that's one of the ways it keeps you alive. Metabolic syndrome, this is a problem on the reservation. Large waist circumference, elevated serum triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, elevated blood pressure, and glucose intolerance. This is a problem. Now the reality is that it's bad here, but it's not nearly as bad as it is in places where the people are shorter and squatter. If you go to any of the pueblos, not the Laguna especially, they're a little bit tall, but if you go to the Tejano or Odom, the Pima, are relatively short individuals. They're kind of round people. They have round faces. The Hopi, these individuals are shorter and squatter. And because they're shorter and squatter, All of these factors are more prevalent in their population. Tejano Odom, 80% diabetes rate. You guys don't come anywhere close to that. Thank God. This is terrible. Tejano Odom, short, little short, chubby guys. Little short, chubby women. And so they develop this metabolic syndrome fairly readily, unfortunately. So you can complain about that or whatever you like. It doesn't really make any difference. They still have more diabetes than you guys do. People with metabolic syndrome have a significantly higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease, but especially diabetes. And of course, the problem is the fact that they put on all their weight around their waists. Tobacco use, smoking more than doubles the chances of a heart attack or stroke. On average, men who smoke die 13.2 years earlier than non-smokers. Men that smoke, you're taking away 13.2 years of your life. Why are men so stupid that when you tell them this, they don't stop smoking? Why don't they just stop? What's wrong with them? Are they really that dumb? Yeah, the answer is yes, they really are that dumb. Female smokers die on average 14.5 years earlier than their non-smoking cohorts. So women are just as stupid, there's just not as many of them that die of cardiovascular disease. 1 year after quitting, the risk of cardiovascular disease has been reduced by 50%. Where was it? In 2008, my friend who just died of a heart attack last year, was it last year or the year before? You want to see a picture of him? I've got a picture of it. I think I do. Maybe no, it's not on this computer. I'm sorry, it's on the other computer. I was going to show you a picture of him. He looks like a smoker. Anyway, 1 year after quitting, the risk factors has been reduced by 50%. 22% of men and 17.5% of women continue to smoke. And you can't make them stop. There's nothing you can do. My brother smokes. The reason he smokes is because he wants to have sex with his wife. And his wife smokes. And she needs somebody to smoke with her, otherwise she feels lonely. It's foreplay. I haven't figured it out yet. It's stupid, is what it is. So my brother's going to kill himself so that he can have sex with his wife. They ought to make a pact and just have sex without tobacco. I don't know. It's my idea. I don't think it's going to work. Type A personality, Friedman and Rossman's term for competitive, hurried, hostile people who may be at risk, at increased risk for developing cardiovascular disease. My God, I can't even read today. Type B is more relaxed. These people are more relaxed. They are not pressured by time considerations, and thus they tend to be resistant to coronary disease. I already explained to you why I had my heart attack. I got fired. It was a highly stressful situation. I had gone to the reservation to help people. I thought I was helping. So it really hurt my feelings, and they fired me after I just busted my tail teaching all these damn summer classes.
The summer you're going to Montana?
North Dakota. We're going to Spirit Lake. It's up near the Canadian border. They're Chippewa. No, they're not. They're Teton Sioux. They're Dakota Sioux. Write that down, Dakota Sioux. This is very important to you.
I'm gonna give you a shirt that says Navajo Nation. You can wear that.
I just ran yesterday. I had a sweatshirt on that said Indian Country, Dakota. It said Dakota. And I'm sure when people read it, they went, does that say anything? Pretend that no other tribes exist.
I'll get you ready for that. I'll give you
There are tons of Navajos up there. There's a reason why they're up there. Sharon knows why. It's a little bit easier to get along, even with the Sioux. Type A have more rapid blood clotting. They have higher cholesterol and triglyceride levels under stress, greater autonomic arousal, elevated heart rate, and higher blood pressure in the face of challenging events. Has anybody ever been to AHEC? Has anybody ever been to AHEC? No? Okay. You get to see all the AHEC schools. These are all the tribal colleges in the United States. They all come together for a big AHEC conference. You guys get to play all kinds of interesting games. No. Okay. We ought to go. Other tribes are different. And they act different. They look different. Some of them look whiter than others. They're really friendly people. AHEC. AIHEC. Stands for American Indian Higher Education Consortium. AHEC. Yeah, there's like 37, 38 tribal colleges. There's 7 in Montana, there's 5 in North Dakota, there's 4 in Minnesota, there's 4 in Wisconsin.
Billings?
It was in Billings this year, yeah. Billings, Montana. The Crow put it on. Actually, there were 3 tribes that put it on. The Crow, the Salish Kootenai, and I think it was either Rocky Boy or Fort Belknap put it on. Anyway, not important. But it's kind of fun to go to those things because you get to see how other Indians act. Yeah. And you get to play basketball against them. That's always exciting. I know, exactly. So people with type A personality have more rapid blood clotting, and it causes blood clots that cause heart attacks and strokes. They have higher cholesterol and triglyceride levels under stress. They have greater autonomic arousal, elevated heart rate, and higher blood pressure in the face of challenging events. They are combat ready. They are hyper-reactive because they're always combat ready. Of course, when you're in the military and you actually are in combat, you have to be ready to pull the trigger. And of course, these guys are, in essence, combat ready. Anxiety and depression are also associated with type A and cardiovascular disease. So these people are more likely to be depressed. Hostility is the toxic core of male type A behavior and consists of a negative attitude that is often long-lasting. They are hostile. They're looking to pick a fight with somebody. Anger is a negative emotion accompanied by physiological arousal, usually shorter in duration. When coronary patients were given the Cook-Medley hostility scale, the researchers found that the higher the score on the scale, the more severe the coronary blockage. Remember, if you have a type A personality, your blood clots more readily. As stupid as that sounds. So anger makes you clot. Now why in the world would this be necessary? Why would anger make your blood clot? There is a logical reason for your blood clotting if you're angry. Let's say that Francis and I get pissed off at each other and we start wailing away on each other and punching each other any place we can, and he lands a good one on my nose. And my nose just starts pouring blood. What happens next? What happens to me? If I'm angry,
Blood's gonna keep coming out.
I'm going to bleed to death if I'm not pissed. If I am angry, my blood's going to clot and I won't bleed to death. Yeah. Once upon a time, I was playing soccer, and this guy hit me in the chest. Rugby tackle, running at full speed. Guy weighed about 250 pounds, looked like a bowling ball. He was not a very tall person. He was actually a little bit shorter than I am, but he weighed 250 pounds. And he hit me with his shoulder, right in the chest. I was running at full speed, and I was a nationally ranked sprinter when I was in college. This is when I was in my 30s. So I was still pretty damn fast. And I was running at full speed. He was running at full speed. Hit me with his shoulder right in the chest. Ruptured my spleen. It pissed me off. off. I was upset. You're not supposed to get tackled in soccer, okay? You're not really supposed to touch each other very much. And here this guy had just tackled me with his shoulder. And he blew my spleen up like a hand grenade had gone off in my gut. But I didn't bleed to death. Most people who have ruptured spleens bleed to death, but I didn't. Part of it had to do with the fact that I was so pissed off. Of course, I also couldn't breathe. You know what else pissed me off the most? He was a friend of mine, damn it, and he almost killed me. He broke his shoulder, he hit me so hard. And he ruptured my spleen. And your spleen is part of your immune system. Of course, at the time I didn't know my spleen was ruptured. I didn't understand what was going on. I was just trying to breathe. So I went to the emergency room and they said, well, if it was a ruptured spleen, you'd be dead. So they didn't diagnose it as a ruptured spleen because they should be dead if it was a ruptured spleen. My God, how stupid can you get? Anyway, I'm still alive. I'm still alive. Okay, I'm not a ghost. Okay, so the less hostile patients have less coronary blockage. Luckily, of course, I was pissed, and luckily I clotted. Okay, otherwise I would have bled to death. There is an artery that goes into your spleen, supplies it with blood, and there's a vein that comes back out, and that thing, both of those were completely. It's like ripping your arm off, and all those blood vessels are just hanging there, dripping blood. And that's what happened with my spleen. And they're both fairly large blood vessels. And neither of them were attached to anything. It was just leaking into my thorax. And I didn't have surgery for 28 hours after I got hurt. 28 hours. I still survived. I had 2 hemorrhages. Well, one when I got hit. And then one that night I tried to stretch. I tried to go to work. So I stretched it out. I started hemorrhaging again. And I didn't feel very good. I was bleeding to death. You know, that always makes you laugh, doesn't it? A study by Shekel et al. In 1983 of men with type A personality showed that the higher the hostility level, the more likely the individual would suffer a fatal heart attack. So the more hostile you are, the more likely you're going to die. These individuals were also more prone to die from other stress-related diseases because of their high stress levels. Anger is a transient emotional response that is triggered by provocation or the perception of mistreatment. And of course, I had been provoked by the guy that hit me in soccer. He tackled me in soccer, which it wouldn't have been so bad if he had tackled me around the ankles or he'd hit me someplace. I didn't even see him coming. He blindsided. And he took me out. A Brit. Guys from England. Son of a bitch was from England. There's something wrong with Englishmen. And there's something wrong with Canadians. We've already figured that out, right? The one guy took out my left knee. The Canadian took out my left knee, and this guy blew up my spleen. He was a Brit. He's from England. So just put that in your little notebook of thoughts about those sons of bitches from England. Okay, just write that down. Sharon's writing this down right now. Okay, good. Good, you just write that down. Don't ever go on a soccer field with those guys. They'll... My son was headbutted by a Brit who was on his team. And he was mad because Chris had missed a pass. And so he came up to him and he headbutted him. He tried to hit him in the nose. But Chris saw it coming and he kind of ducked a little bit. And he caught him on the side of the face. But he hit him with his forehead. He's trying to bust his nose. Of course, if you break somebody's nose, your eyes immediately, it breaks, there's a blood vessel right in here, and you immediately get a raccoon face. But it tears up your eyes and you can't see. So if you can break somebody's nose, they're blind, and you know they're trying to defend themselves, and they can't see because the ears or the eyes are just tearing like crazy. I'm just, okay. So the next time you beat somebody up, hit them in the nose. break your nose. You headbutt him. Just like that idiot. And he was on his team. That was a crazy one. Englishman, did you write that down? Headbutt? Okay. Englishman. They're the dirtiest soccer players. Ah, they're so bad. Anger expression is the behavior of a person in response to a feeling of anger. 20% of fatal myocardial infarctions occur because of an angry outburst. Really? Yes. And now we're going to talk about anger and myocardial infarctions. Myocardial, myo means muscle, cardial means heart, heart muscle, infarction means death, death of heart muscle. Myocardial infarction, as much fun as that is. Atherosclerosis risk in communities study is a massive study of 13,000 middle-aged men and women. 256 of the people had heart attacks during the study, 256 out of 13,000. People who scored highest on an anger scale were 3 times more likely to have a heart attack than those with the lowest score. So anger kills people, period, because you have heart attacks. Researchers speculate that anger is as dangerous as more traditional heart attack risks, such as smoking, high-fat diet, and obesity. You will kill yourself quicker with anger than you will with smoking, or with obesity, or with a high-fat diet. You can eat all the hamburgers you want, as long as you just stay kind of, don't get angry with anybody. A study by Hilbert in 1994 asked myocardial infarction survivors what kicked off their heart attacks. Are you ready for this? What kicked off their heart attacks? Heart attacks were twice as likely to occur within 2 hours of an angry episode than any other cause. The individual was angry, they were tense with clenched fists and gritted teeth, like you're ready to hit somebody.
Careful.
Exactly. The most frequent cause of anger was arguments with family members, conflicts at work, and legal problems. So be careful the next time you have an argument with your mom, dad, your nolly. I don't care who you're yelling at. Just don't do it. And don't clench your fist and grit your teeth, because that will cause people to have heart attacks. The reality is, it usually has to do with an argument with your significant other. That kills people. This is one of the reasons why there are so many people in the world who say, oh, the last time I talked to him, I said something really horrible to him. We were having an argument, and then he died of a heart attack. It happens all the time. You read this, or you'll read it on the internet. Somebody says, oh, the last time I talked to my husband, I yelled at him, and he thought that I hated him. Yeah, and then he died of a heart attack because he was yelling back at you. As sad as that is. Anyway, so relationships will kill people. As horrible as that is. A longitudinal study looking at lawyers who were both type A and type B found that both types had heart attacks at the same rate. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you're hostile or whether you're laid back, you're still going to have a heart attack if you're a lawyer at the same rate. But when hostility and anger were factored in, hostile and angry lawyers were 7 times more likely to have a heart attack than people that weren't hostile and people that weren't angry. So people that lost their temper were more likely to have, 7 times more likely to have a heart attack. Suppressed anger may be as hazardous as expressed anger. And this is according to a study by Pennebaker in 1992. Research with cardiac patients finds that when the patients deny their anger and frustration, they are 4.5 times more likely to die within 5 years of their original heart attack. Okay, so it doesn't do you any good to suppress the anger. You need to express the anger. You're actually more better off. You're better off expressing the anger than if you don't express the anger. If you keep it in. So you need to punch the wall or bust an egg in the palm of your hand, or at least scream. That's good for you. Or swear. By golly. You'd be surprised. And that's one of the reasons why military people swear so much. they're in high-stress situations, it's actually good for you. Swearing is good for you. Suppressing the bad words is bad for you. So go ahead, drop the F-bomb. It's okay. It's better for you than not expressing your anger.
Mother flowers.
My mom is a perfect example. The lady used to drop F-bombs all the time. Her favorite word was shit. She used to call people stupid sons of bitches all the time. But it was good. She lived to be 98 years old. And of course, you know, church people don't want you to say these bad words, but they're good for you. It's good for you. It's better than suppressing your anger. So go ahead and drop your F-bombs, Mose. You're okay. Who was I talking to the other day that was dropping F-bombs all over the place? I was going, oh, really? Okay. Oh, it's Marius. I can't remember what he's so upset about. But he's just dropping F-bombs all over the place. I'm sorry?
My niece, she's a girl. She's a girl, say, dick.
Oh, yeah?
Dick.
Dick?
Dick.
Oh, shit? Oh, okay.
Her papa said it. Her
Okay.
papa said it.
Oh, shit.
He said something, and he's like, oh, shit. And she's like, oh, dick.
So she's going to turn out just like my mother. Maybe she'll live to be 98 like my mother. Moderation. My mother was a nurse, and of course in the hospital you can't swear. So she used to go and get coffee all the time. And of course in the cafeteria you'd say anything you want. When you're up on the ward you can't call a doctor the stupid son of a bitch. But she certainly could when she got the coffee. Or she'd go in a room and just start swearing up a storm. When she worked in the emergency room and she was dealing with patients, a lot of times the only way to get them to listen to you, if you're a female and they're a male, is to tell them to, you dumb shits, sit down and shut up. That's the only way to deal with it. That's how she dealt with it. She was really good at it. She was only 4'8". I mean, she was just a tiny little thing. She only weighed, I don't know, 100 pounds. So she needed to swear in order to make people hear what she said. Moderation seems to be the saving grace. Research looking at healthcare workers found that the individuals who were the most likely to survive were those who had moderate anger expression. And of course, I've been in medicine, and my mother taught me how to swear. So I was really good at not swearing at the patients. But as I was walking back up to the laboratory, I would always express my feelings. Other research found that feeling anxious, jittery, and nervous, and dissatisfied, sad, and sorry elevated your blood pressure. And this is one of the reasons why they have invented these stress things to squeeze and whatnot. I don't need to do that because I swear a lot. And if you, well, I do swear in front of you guys because you're all my friends, but I mean, if I was around Dr. Garrity, I would probably keep my
gang.
Yeah, you're my gang. We're all gang members. Depression is a strongly implicated risk factor in cardiovascular disease and metabolic syndrome. It rivals regular exposure to secondhand smoke. Depression is not simply an after effect of cardiovascular disease diagnosis, rather an independent risk factor with likely genetic and environmental causes. Depression remains underdiagnosed and often untreated in many people with cardiovascular disease. And of course, when you have a heart attack, one of the problems that you have is that you become depressed. And of course, they need to deal with that. But of course, medical doctors are not the brightest people in the world. So if they cure you, or not cure you, if they save your life, they think the game's over. I just saved that guy's life. But the problem is that now you can't do the same things you were doing before. You're not supposed to have sex for like a month after you have a heart attack, depending on all these other things. So this is a negative. This is a real negative as far as a lot of individuals are concerned. And they get depressed because what are they going to do next? Well, they're certainly not going to have sex, that's for sure. So they get depressed. And of course, you need to deal with this. One way or another, you need to deal with the depression. So one of the things they really should do is, after they save you from having a heart attack, they need to send you to a psychologist and talk about it. They need to get you to laugh is what they need to get you to do, because you're thinking, oh my God, I can't eat no more hamburgers, no more cheese. You know, if you're a smoker, I can't smoke anymore. You know, you got all these things that were the joys of your life. All of a sudden, you can't do them anymore, including sex, of course. I mean, that's part of the whole equation. And you can have sex. Eventually, you can have sex. And if you're a male, of course, you're thinking, oh my God, I can't have sex for a month. And then, and of course, he just told your wife the same thing. And if she starts celebrating, it gets even more. That's a joke. That means she doesn't want to have sex anymore. I'm sorry. It was not a very funny joke. I apologize. Yes, I got to have sex with that son of a bitch. All right. I know he said a month, but I'm thinking 2 months. Just keep you alive. You got it. You got the joke. Okay. Good. Okay. Socioeconomic status is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease as defined by lower education level and lower income. And a European study found that people lower on the socioeconomic status scale were more likely to smoke, to eat an unhealthy diet, and to live a sedentary life with little social support.
That's what I found in one of my research.
Oh.
The smoke, unhealthy diet,
Yeah.
and social support.
Yeah. Yeah. If you eat all your meals over at the gas station, not a very good idea. Really a bad idea. Yeah. Less social support. Jobs that are the most stressful are jobs with high productivity, excessive overtime, jobs with conflicting requirements, jobs with little personal control. Job strain is defined as a job with high demands and low decision latitude. One of the problems that we saw in Vietnam, if you were a higher ranking individual, you didn't suffer from PTSD, you didn't suffer from stress. If you were a lower ranking individual and you had no control over anything that happened to you, and every time they said, go take that damn hill, you would go, damn, I have to go take that hill. I can't argue against it. You had no control over your life, then those are the individuals that suffer from PTSD, and those are the individuals that suffer from stress. And of course, PTSD causes stress. So the less control you have, the more problems you're going to have. Workers who feel that they have been promoted too quickly and haven't been given the skills that they need to succeed feel high stress. Workers who feel stress, those who feel that they have been promoted too slowly, those who feel insecure about their jobs, those who feel that their ambitions have been thwarted. This is not an easy job. Teaching is not the easiest job in the world. But I've been doing it for 25 years. Geez, I put this PowerPoint together, I don't know, 7 years ago, I think. And I change it every year, but because every time the textbook changes, I always go through this stuff. But I put this thing together 7 years ago. I've been through this stuff, you know, dozens of times. Well, maybe not dozens of times. I've been through it a lot. Okay. So this is not a high stress situation for me at all. And I make all kinds of jokes. And I swear in class. You know, I get to do all these things that dissipate your stress. But this is easy stuff for me. I mean, I'm not having any problems teaching. This is not a high stressful job. But if I was at Harvard, they wouldn't let me use PowerPoints. You know,
Really?
I know it would be harder, and everybody wanted that.
How would you explain it?
What, this stuff without using the PowerPoints? I don't know. I love the pictures. The pictures are the best part. I hope you guys aren't offended by the backs of somebody's head.
Who's more attractive?
Yeah, exactly.
The last class.
I know. Wait a minute, it gets better. We're going to have a beauty contest later on in that chapter.
Really?
Oh yeah, we're going to have a beauty contest with people on the screen. I mean, you already saw what I was talking about. Especially complex jobs that make mental demands or require skill and training promote cardiovascular disease. Complex jobs, especially around hostile and hurried workers, is stressful. I don't know if you've ever been around these individuals. Everything has to be done today. They want to complain about this or that or the other. Sue drives me nuts. She'll come into my office and she'll just be ranting about something. And I'm going, okay. She says, doesn't that bother you? And I go, no. Is there something wrong with you? Yes. No, there's not. I don't know. I know it upsets you, but I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. Half the time it has to do with money. I don't understand these things. I don't even know how much money I make. I have no clue. I can look at my pay stub, but I never look at my pay stub. I don't care. My wife takes care of all that stuff. Let her worry. Let her die of a heart attack, not me. I just work, okay? I never see... that's all I see.
She just like give you an allowance or something?
Well, not really. I can get all the money out of the bank I want, but they never go anywhere. So, I mean, what am I going to do? Buy $50 worth of groceries at the gas station? That ain't going to happen. I went to Chinley yesterday and bought a couple things. I bought lemons, 89 cents a piece. Jeez, for a lemon? What else did I buy? I bought dog food. I bought Mountain Dew. It's my one vice. I do have a vice. These kinds of jobs around hurried workers promotes a type A reaction to the stress and can cause CVD. Sarah does this to me. She'll say, you need to get this in right away. And I'll go, okay, I'll get it done. And eventually I really do get it done. I always get it done. I just don't do it as fast as she wants me to do. Loneliness and lack of social support promotes stress, but the connection becomes more acute as the individual ages. Research by Roberman et al. In 1984, looking at myocardial infarction sufferers 3 years after the attack, had death rates 4 times higher if they had a combination of high stress and social isolation. So as you get older, you need to partner with somebody. You need to be around people. You need to go live with somebody. This is what I'm 70 years old. Okay, so I've got to go and live with somebody if my wife dies, which she keeps threatening to do. If she dies, who am I going to be around? Can I stay here with you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I belong any place on this reservation. Yeah. Move into a hogan someplace.
No, I was like, I got a grandma.
Is that right? Is she good looking? Is she hot?
Red. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I guess I'm good.
I got a grandma.
You are now.
Oh, move in with somebody.
You can buy woods for us.
I just bought a load of wood. I almost ran out. Well, I'll have to keep working, won't I? Yeah, okay.
Have
So-
Navajo wedding.
You're marrying me off to your grandma. My wife's still alive. Come on. And I think my daughter wants me to move in with her to take care of the kid. She's got a baby. Well, not a baby. He's 6. What am I talking about? He scored a goal over the weekend. I know. He shot from the halfway line. I don't know if you guys understand. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's a long, long way. And he shot from the halfway line. He shot this sky ball, and it just kept going up and up and up, and all of a sudden it came down right underneath the crossbar. So he scored a goal. Yeah, I know. He was trying to cross it, and he kind of got a hold of it a little bit. But he scored a goal. He was really happy. I mean, it was like half the field he kicked a goal. Anyway, and they won by 1 goal. Living alone after a heart attack is associated with the risk of recurrence of the coronary disease, the heart disease, as well as a fatal heart attack. A study by Williams in 1996 found that the unmarried had 3 times probability of dying in the 5 years post-heart attack. Something to think about. So don't if somebody has a heart attack in your family, you need to make sure that they're with somebody. or that they are with members of the family some of the time, if not all the time. If they live alone, you need to make sure that they're taken care of. Otherwise, they're going to just die. That's just the way the world works. Women who receive little support either in the workplace or at home are more prone to deadly heart attacks. But researchers have discovered that the quality of an individual's relationships have a mediating effect on levels of stress. So if they're married to somebody that they really like, if they're with somebody that they really like, they're less likely to die of a heart attack. And this is really weird. So when we talk about the quality of our relationships, we really need to talk about the quality of our relationships, even though you can't measure this. It's like somebody asking you, what is love? I mean, who can define love? We try, but can we really say this is love and this isn't love? If you're madly in love with somebody and they leave you and then 3 days later you hook up with somebody else, were you really in love with the first person? Yes, of course you were. But this really has a mediating effect on people. I mean, I've thought I've married for forever 3 times. Well, this is my 3rd forever, damn it. The first forever only lasted for about 4.5 years. The second forever lasted about 4.5 months. And this one's lasted 40 years. So probably if I had had a heart attack with number 1 or number 2, that sounds like I'm having a bowel movement, doesn't it? With number 1 or number 2, would I have survived the heart attack? But since I'm with this wife, and she's not a very affectionate person.
Number 3.
She's the worst nurse in the world. She's horrible.
Number 3.
My God. If you need something, you know, and you're debilitated, and you can't get up and get it your damn self, you're going to either die of, you're either going to starve to death, or you're going to die of dehydration, because she won't bring it to you. I mean, but I love her, and I've been married to her for 40 years. But most of the relationship has been me taking care of her, not her taking care of me. But I had my heart attack and I survived it. It may be because of the relationship between my wife and myself. That's probably what did it. The other thing is, I hate for people to do things for me. So whether I'm on crutches or whether I'm in a wheelchair, I'll go get it myself. I cook my own food and the whole thing. I can wash my clothes. I wash dishes every morning. I wash clothes all the time. I can take care of my own self. But I need my wife. And I'm lonely. I really am. And this year seems to be worse than any other. Haven't figured it out yet. Doesn't make any sense. I have to call her every night. And I'm looking forward to seeing her again. I really am. And I'm counting the days before I see her again. I'll see her on the 3rd of May. We'll see. She's got a medical problem going on. Is it after time? It is after time. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll stop right here. We'll pick this up next time. Apologize for going over.